Welcome to this episode. We sit down with the legendary band Cornershop. We talk about how they got started, challenges they faced, racism in the musical industry today, and the future of music in general. Have a great day, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Cornershop are a band originating from the early 1990s. In a time where music was typically white dominated, here was a band led by a British Asian person. They have been known to push the boundaries of rock and psychedelic music, fusing different sounds together, often challenging the political establishment in this country. With 30 years in the music industry, their longevity to create music is a reminder of the importance of arts in today's world, and through diversity we can achieve a peaceful society. Hello everyone, welcome to this very special episode. We are joined by Tjinder from Cornershop.
Hi, I'm Tjinder Singh from Cornershop.
So Tjinder, how did you get started with Cornershop, and what was the musical landscape like in the early 1990s?
Well, we first got started by not wanting to be in a group and just making up noise, really, because we weren't musicians as such. But we used to watch a lot of music, and as the months went on, we realised that the music that we were making was okay compared to the stuff that we were seeing live. So we slowly drifted into being in a more serious band. Never really that seriously, actually. We were just doing it for the social aspect of it, and to be meeting up in different places, and to enjoy making different songs on the hoof. And then we played our most southern gig in Harlow at the Square, and we didn't have we didn't think we had a great gig, but the audience did, and so did Gary from Ouija Records, and so we were signed on that night to Ouija Records, and that sort of made everything a little more serious. I was on the dole at the time, so it gave me an idea to not go back to the dole and work very hard at the opportunity that we'd been given, and that was it. So there was no real plan at all. We fell upon it.
Okay, so you would say that after the gig was done and you guys got offered that contract, that's when everything sort of came together for you guys as a group?
I think so, yeah. I mean, I was actually organising some shows and putting everything together, and the logistics was quite difficult. And along came a label that said, well, don't do that, and we'll take care of that, and we'll organise this, and we'll do that. So all of a sudden there was a lot of time left aside to just get on with creating music.
Yeah.
What would you say are your musical influences? With that being said, what are your main musical influences growing up?
Well, they're very varied. In terms of Indian music, I would say Pachungi Group, who were from Birmingham. I loved their sound. They did devotional stuff to start with, or at least that's where I saw them. Then they ventured off into more non-devotional music, Punjabi folk music. And then unfortunately split up into groups like Apna Sangeet and Golden Star, which I didn't particularly like at all. So there's the Punjabi folk group side. There's I've always loved Christian gospel music. That is like devotional Sikh devotional music. So it has to make an impact. And then the rest of it was really putting together a jigsaw of a record collection that my parents didn't have. So that was exciting as well. And I also think that's what sort of made our sound as we've developed, because I didn't have the Beatles, as a direct sort of thing to listen to. That was something that had to be put together as well. So it was a very enjoyable journey of record collecting and finding out different kinds of music and really analysing and taking it all in rather than having it at your feet and not thinking about it.
You mentioned in the article about The Guardian about your hatred for Morrissey. Is that still true today?
Oh, I've a hatred for what Morrissey has said. I don't really hate him as a person, else I'd be falling into his sort of trap. I've got a disdain for what he's putting out, which I think is rather premeditated and therefore makes it equally double evil.
Yeah, because it's something that I'm currently thinking about as well, because I'm a quite big fan of the Smiths myself, and the fact that, you kind of delve deep into Morrissey as a character and you kind of see like his faults and some of the things that he said, it kind of makes you question his music, doesn't it? And things that he says sometimes.
I think so myself. I mean, we again, talking to Jigsaws, we put together our own sort of portfolio on what we thought, whether it was his dodgy lyrics, whether it was his dodgy lyrics over a certain time, whether it was his backdrop, whether it was his use of the flag, and whether it was a whole host of other sort of elements of right-wingness that he put forward at the time. And at the time, it was a very tenuous thing. It was very easy for people to say to dismiss those things. Nowadays, it's a lot clearer. I mean, he's a walking racist, and he makes no bones about it. And politically, he puts himself in that category as well. So nowadays, it's quite easy. And so the answer is you have to burn those Smiths.
Yeah.
Smiths albums of yours. So I've made it very easy for you.
Yeah, you have. You have. What would you say there was like racism in the 90s in terms of the music you were making that you were facing from other people?
Oh, there was. And the biggest crowd that were against us were the Asian people. They really hated us.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, we had a hard time with the Asian people, and it's understandable. Anyone who gets up and sings in English is going to be treated with a little bit of disdain, especially if they're out of London, not in those very far-reaching, great-thinking places like Southall, where you're from. If you're from Wolverhampton, then people take a very dim view of that. But if you're also getting a guitar and singing in English and on a stage, then people took umbrage to that. So we had it hard from both sides, actually. Yeah, quite hard, especially when we first started out from the Asian community. They were ready to kill us.
Why would you?
No
why
way.
Would you? Why would
That's just-
you? Like, what are some of the things they were saying to you?
We played in working men's clubs and in places that are a bit more relaxed like that. We had threats from Asian people as well as English people.
Threats?
Yeah, threats. Being
So,
walked out of venues. They didn't like what we did.
But
They didn't think it was right.
but wasn't your music trying to like bridge that gap together between
They didn't listen to the music. They just saw what was on stage and what was being done. They probably couldn't hear the music for the noise, but yeah. So who can blame them? But that's how it was to start with. As time went on and lyrics could be heard, then things changed slowly. But yeah, they were definitely a very hard taskmasters, the Asian people. Still are.
Still are, yeah. Asian people can be quite critical sometimes, isn't it?
Well, they're very fixed in their ways a lot of the time, and if you're doing something that's not so fixed with them, then it can be very difficult to get through to them.
Do you feel that kind of? Do you think the racism still there now in terms of the Asians, or it's gone less now since the 90s?
Sorry, racism against Asians?
Yeah, in terms of the music industry now, or do you think it's?
Oh no, it's always there. It's always going to be there. Yeah, it's weird because we're so old that I can sort of look back on a time where we grew up with the default of being black and Asian, and we knew our place. Whereas in the 90s, people started to move away from that. They started to think that their place was exactly the same as any other person in that country, and they had a complete right to everything that anyone else had. And woe betide anyone who thought different. We didn't have that attitude. We had an attitude that we were different and we knew our place, and we had to be quite wary of that. So it's quite weird for that kind of question to me, because we've always seen ourselves as we're a different tier to the mainstream white people and the mainstream black people as well.
And did that influence the kind of music you guys made?
Well, yeah, I was born in Wolverhampton, where Enoch Powell was talking his first load of Brexit nonsense in '68. So I was born in a cloud of that, and that probably influenced me more than any of the trends in music or racism of the 90s.
Do you feel like there's been a decline in South Asian artists in the mainstream then? And why do you think that is?
You know, I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know if there is or there isn't. It probably hasn't been. There seems to be more writers. There's even a few comedians. No, I would think there's more people going into the arts than there of an Asian bent than there ever has been. Whether that makes it any better, I'm not too sure. I think there is a lot of people who have been given opportunities that a lot of people wouldn't have in the past, and maybe not too much on merit. And some people think that's an okay thing. I mean, stuff like BBC Asian Network is like a hotbed for young, up-and-coming Asian talent. And
it is, yeah.
And some of it, you just think, well, is it justified? Or are they actually doing anything different? Or are they doing anything that's even Asian? Why is there this hotbed there? It's quite weird to see that. I've also been walked out of BBC Asian music as well, whatever they're called, which I think is quite sad, because I think groups like us made them. It got them the attention that they needed to give them a platform to have a bloody department of Asian people there.
Sure, yeah, because the whole idea of Brit Asian is, you know, it was derived around your time, and they've gotten where they've gotten so far is sort of based off of whatever happened before. So
I think so, but in terms of music, I don't think they get music. Personally, I don't.
Why do you feel that way?
Because I hear their music and I've heard like French music. French rap has not changed since the 90s, and that's what I find Asian music is. It's not changed since the 90s. And a lot of the finger of that has to be pointed at the people who are in charge of pushing it and playing it. And I think Asian Digital Network play a very slim remit of nonsense, and that's why it's just stayed in the background, and people move away from that organisation and do different things, like speak the news and other shit like that. Anyway, I was told to be very positive. I'm by my wife to keep positive, so I'm very positive from now on.
Do you feel like a lack of, sorry,
Which is
do you feel like there's a lack of genres in that network then that they're playing? So you kind of hear the same stuff as you said.
I feel that they don't want to move away from anything other than what is rather safe.
So if someone came in with the guitar, high gain distortion, and started playing in the Asian networks, they probably won't allow it, would they?
I think they would be treated with the same disdain that we were at the working men's clubs. Sorry, I've lost my train of thought. Sorry.
That's fine.
all right.
Yeah, so because now you've kind of painted the picture. So if I've imagined myself just going to a studio and saying, like, I've got like a 4-piece band, I'm going to BBC Asian Network, and if I try to play some of the songs, I could just get rejected. Really, that's not really right, is it?
You could
I
get
could be
what, sorry?
rejected from the building. You know what I mean? I wouldn't be allowed to play.
You probably wouldn't get in there
Yeah.
to start with.
Probably, yeah. Probably thrown out by security. So it's quite sad.
Well, it does happen.
Did you face these obstacles in your time when you guys were like going to radio stations and, like, let's say when you guys made music, were there any obstacles in terms of like radio stations playing your music as well at the time?
Yeah, there always has been obstacles, and in a way, that's what made it interesting. That's what made it enjoyable, because you have to beat obstacles, and so we've always tried to change what we do and keep it interesting for ourselves, and hope that other people will be carried away by the interest as well. So we've never really stuck with just one sound. We've always we'd like to reflect our record collections, and we'd like to go for lots of different sounds. That makes it harder, because things don't stick so readily. But it also makes it more interesting for ourselves.
Yeah, because it's an exciting journey, isn't it, that you go on?
I think what we've done as a journey has been pretty much as exciting as it gets, because we're totally independent from the start. We've been on medium, we've been on small, we've been on major labels, we're now on our own label. So we've seen the whole gamut of it. And, after so many years, coming out with an album that we've just come out with, which people perceive as our best album, is quite a feat. And so I don't think we've ever done anything that's not been that interesting, as far as I'm concerned, because it's all new ground. It's not where anyone else has been as such.
Yeah, and when the Brim of Usher song exploded, the remix, right? Were you guys expecting that, or like, what was your reaction when you heard about it doing so well?
Well, we were already having a lot of success with the album that the original was on, when I Was Born for the Seventh Time, and we were in America by then. So really, if anything, it sort of dampened the flames of what the album was doing. And in America, you have to build an album up, and it takes months and years to actually put the hard work in and get that through. And we'd got the Spin album of the year. We'd done really well in Rolling Stone and other places. MTV were playing us all the time. When that came along, we didn't know what to expect, but when we heard it, we knew that it was going to be on fire. We thought it was a great remix, and it was, and it still is. And Unfortunately for us, that took a lot of the shine off the album, but it also gave the industry, going back to the industry, a nice excuse to just slap us down a bit and say, well, it's a remix, and they couldn't give us the credit completely. That would be too much. It could have been a lot worse for us if we didn't have that remix, but the album after that had songs like Lessons Learned from Rocky 1 to Rocky 3, and that could have done quite well without all the focus on something like Brim from Asher. So one never knows which way it could have gone.
Yeah.
We love the remix, we love the original, we love everything we've ever done.
What would you say is your favorite sort of piece of work that you guys have made? What's your personal favorite of everything that you guys have created?
I really love Motion 11. I'm not doing the vocals on it, but I wrote that. Lessons Learned is a wonderful song, I think. There's quite a few. Staging the Plaguing of the Raised Platform was one of John Peel's favourite songs of ours. And then stuff off the new album, pretty much all of it is quite close to our heart because we put so much effort into it. And then there's other stuff that's like the Bubbly Core album. We're very, very pleased with that. I think that's still ahead of its time. I don't see that going out of fashion at all. If anything, I think music is going more towards that, especially Asian music, and that was done just after the turn of the century. So we're still very pleased with that.
How was touring with Oasis, by the way?
Oh, it was great. Yeah. Again, we didn't know what to expect. We it was in America, so we turned up, and the venues were massive arenas. And on the first night, they played. Well, I think we met some of them in sound check, and then they played, and then we went backstage, and we all really got on very well. Their crew were very nice and helpful to us. We were treated with lots of hospitality, and we got on so well that we then did a song with the bass player, and we did a song with Noel as well. But it was all very positive. We didn't see that much arguing within them as a group, and it was. I don't think there could have been two more akin people put together that sounded so different. And Noel would come on and play Jill and the Share at the end with us, and we Ben and Anthony would sometimes join them on stage as well. We got on, and I lived in Manchester in '89, and we were studied in Preston, so we knew how Northern folk are, and it was great.
Does their reputation by the media, is it true, or is it just all phony?
I would say it's true. It's just that we didn't see that much of it on tour. We saw there was some weird things going on backstage, and it was definitely rock and roll. But that's sorry, my phone's that's what makes them or broke them.
You also mentioned in a recent Guardian article that you didn't see the band as part of Britpop. Do you feel Britpop wasn't as big as it was perceived?
No, I don't think Britpop was. I think Britpop was a name, and it was a marketing tool, and it was a collective of British artists put under one umbrella to make it very easy for the British industry to sell itself abroad. I think it's more of a thing now than it was then. It wasn't anything, and if anyone, no one has ever admitted to being in a Britpop band. No one, because it's a very embarrassing, again, waving piece of nonsense. There's nothing to it. No group has ever said we're Britpop, but that's the moniker.
And how does it feel to be like a part of that moniker then? Because
we don't feel that. And when we first started out, we were under the auspice of Riot Girl, and then very quickly, quite frankly, Asian Underground, and then we moved on. We moved, whether it's Britpop or whatever it is. We've never, as I said, we do different songs, so we've never felt the luxury of being within a certain remit, and we've never had the disbenefit of being held back by a certain group. We just do our own thing. I know, shocking.
It's weird, yeah. I guess like it is true to some extent. When I do read some artists like Oasis or Blur, and when they say, "Oh, battle of the Britpop," and they're kind of like, "Well, we're not battling each other. We don't really care about Blur versus Oasis, for example, or the whole idea of Britpop." So it's kind of interesting to see your perspective through it and how it's kind of shared amongst the other bands at the time who were also perceived as Britpop as well.
Yeah, no, I think it was a marketing tool more than anything. It was the time itself was very vibrant. Obviously, Labour had just got back in. Being in London was great. The clubs were great. The technology in clubs, the audio-visual stuff was just starting. It was a multimedia sort of thing to go into a club rather than just go into a dingy place in the East End. Everything was up to little, and everyone was quite enthusiastic. And I might not care for Britpop, but I do think that being a band throughout the 90s was an excellent time to be being a band. I also think it was the last time where there was a lot of money flying about. There's no money in the industry anymore, obviously because of Brexit. So this year it's dead, but even the rest of this century has been people have had to sell their souls to get money rather than just sell a few records.
I wanted to ask about Brimford of Asher again. How did Norman Cook contact you guys about it?
Well, he actually got in touch with the record label. We were in America, and we were told that he'd heard the song on radio and that he wanted to do a mix of it. One thing about the original was there was no bass on it, and Norman's a bass player, so he thought that even if he had added the bass, then it would do something to make it different. And so we said yes, and he came back with his mix, and that was that.
And would you say Bollywood was a musical inspiration?
No, I wouldn't. Hindi films, maybe. Bollywood to me is a bit like Bhangra. Folk music was fine. Bhangra sort of took it a bit too far. Hindi music was fine. Bollywood takes it a bit too far. I used to love the Hindi films, but I started to dislike them sort of towards the mid 80s. They were all the same, and some of the stars I just couldn't be doing with.
How do you feel about the musical landscape changing for, say, Bhangra music at the time?
I thought it was very.
You have like influences from reggae and stuff coming in, and remixings and stuff happening in the 90s.
That was 90s, but late 80s was more Bhangra. It was I thought it was a false sort of amalgamation of West and Indian, and you could hear that. Simply putting drum beats onto tracks to make them more Western, or putting a bass line in. You went to a wedding and a reception, and you'd see these bands get bigger and bigger, and then all of a sudden they'd be saying, "Oh, buy our single because we want to hit the single charts." And when I heard things like that, I thought that sounds a bit shit, and it's just not that sincere. So, other people might take a view. Well, that's what they needed to do, and I didn't. It's the same with Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan. His music was untouchable. So when people did touch it and did make mixes of it, they just spoilt it. I think so. I think
It ruined it. Yeah,
you
that's
can't
very
touch
true.
that and make it any better because it's just steeped in a tradition, and putting horrible keyboard bass lines on it and just killed it. Loved him.
He is pretty good. What I wanted to know is how much time goes into
I
making
think
like a song for you guys?
It varies. Sometimes they're just done off the hoof. Sometimes they take months. Sometimes they take years. I think nowadays it takes a bit longer. When you get older, it gets harder to give a
Sure.
shit.
So how long? So your most recent album, I realized that there was a 5-year gap from your most recent album and then the album that was released before that, if I'm correct, I think. So, were you guys working on the most recent album in that time, or was it did it take exactly 5 years, or was it, longer than that,
Some
or
songs
was
were
it shorter than
longer
that?
Or we started before that.
Yeah.
Some songs were done just before we started mixing. Sorry.
Sure.
Yeah, it was a difficult album to do because we needed to get it right. We needed to make an impact, and we didn't
Sure.
want. That's why we used less technology on it. We wanted to make it more in the same motorway, and we
Yeah.
needed it to work, and it did work. And the reviews
Mhm.
have been absolutely great, and it's still going. So we're very happy about that. And it's still got the variety, still got the politics, still doing something different, and we couldn't really be more happy about it because being in the industry as long as we have, it's a shock to us as well that people have taken to it so well.
Yeah, it is quite well put together, actually. So, a little bit of background about me. I'm not really someone that has grown up listening to rock music or indie music or any sort of that sort of stuff. I usually listen to different kind of music. So, Harminder, obviously he's been a big fan of your band for such a long time. So he told me to check you guys out. And when I went to listen to your music and I listened to your most recent album, and there were genuinely songs on there that I genuinely enjoyed. So I've actually made notes of the songs that are my favorite. I've got 2 that I know. One of them is I'm a Wooden Soldier. I like that one quite a lot, and I also like Slingshot as well. I think that's pretty good. So what I wanted to know is, so when I listened to the whole album, the first thing I picked up on is something that's very different to anything I've ever heard before. So you literally rightly said that it's a very different sound. It's good, and it's good to listen to, and there's also a sense of it gives you a lot of different flavors as you go through each song. So what makes you decide, oh, this is the song that's going to go on an album? And let's say if you've got an album that has 10 songs, do you make like 20 songs for an album, and then do you decide, okay, from this 20 we're going to filter down to these 10 songs? How does that process work?
Well, with this particular album, we just worked on songs and just carried on writing. I was actually not in a position to write too much, lyric-wise anyway, and my head wasn't really there. But musically, the ideas were still going on. So we just persevered with recording musical ideas, and then some musical ideas would have one line of chorus in them, or a certain breakdown of a verse. And the rest of it would be filled in with either mumbles or repeated lines. And that's how I carried on. And so normally the ideas are lyrics first, and then the music comes after that. This time round, it was different.
Sure.
The music came first, and then the brain had to be then put into the head. So it was different.
Okay.
But it was good to do that. We're lucky because we had the time to do it. I don't think a lot of other groups have that time, because we're on our own label, and so we'd waited so long to put it out. And I also think we waited for a good time to put it out. I don't think the climate would have been there if we'd have put it any earlier.
Why is that?
I think people were still into indie music that was all band, or just single songwriter people, and slowly that started to go to turn back. And also the sound, our sound is, some of it is retro sounding, some of it's not, but I just don't think that the climate would have been there for ears to be open as much as they have been last year and this year.
So how long were you sitting on this project for?
About 5 years. Yeah. So
wow. I guess that explains the sort of the gap from your second last album to this. Okay, interesting. And also, you tend to see with a lot of bands, they get together and they have great success, and then the band, not all the time, but it tends to fall apart. But your band is still stuck together, which is a really great thing to see. So what's made you, like, all of you guys stick together? What's been the glue to keeping you guys together even after all these years?
Me and Ben studied together, so we've known each other since. We've known each other more than half our lives, and we've always got on. We've never really had any arguments. Maybe the odd musical difference, but not many, because we generally do tend to like whatever each other likes. So that's been a big thing. And I also think that the way that we've been as a band, as I say, starting from working men's clubs and working ourselves up to playing around the world, and that's not been something that's totally been overnight. It's had to be worked on, and so that's been to our benefit as well. And we don't actually tour anymore anyway. We stopped over 5 years ago, and therefore we concentrated our energies towards making songs and recording them. we've all got different. Most of us have families, except our percussionist, who's got his percussion, and we tend to just do whatever we can nowadays to just record when we can, and so that's saved us as a group as well.
Would you go back on tour anytime in the future?
Hopefully not. No, I think I've certainly had enough of touring.
What do you think of bands that still tour to this day, like Rolling Stones, for example?
Well, and I think it's great. I think that if they've got the energy to do it, and whoever they are, and if they've got the public to do it, then that's excellent. I just had enough, especially with America, because, as I said, America's a hard slog. So we would be out there like 2 months at a time, and it started to it starts to get to you. But no, when we were touring, I loved it. I thought it was a wonderful thing. But as I say, when other things come into play, like families and just getting older, then there's other things to do than just make music.
Sure.
Which, yeah, but I mean, obviously, I wish the Rolling Stones wouldn't do it, because I much more preferred them in '73. But yeah, that's just how it is.
Oh yeah. What would you say is the future then for Cornershop then?
You know, I really don't know. The one great thing that the last album has done for us is not only was it received very well, but it's also opened up the avenues of the past albums that we've done. So people have gone more for the back catalogue. And as I said, I think it's a very interesting story that we put in the way that we went about things, and certainly what we left behind in terms of recordings. We feel that a lot of the albums have references that are in different songs that are the same, that sort of link with each other, or they have characters that are the same that link with each other. So you're just there recording albums and trying to get things finished, and before you know it, you're a few albums down the line, and everything's like a chessboard on one board, and people can see it, and it makes for an intriguing bit of chess.
It does indeed. So, do you guys see yourself like making another album or two, or is that something you guys haven't spoken about yet?
We still speak a little with lockdown. Ben lives in Tooting. I'm in Hackney, so we haven't. I think we've seen each other once in the last year.
Yeah, lockdown's been crazy, hasn't it?
I think everyone has felt, whether they want to admit it or not, everyone's been mentally and physically changed, some more than most, and it will be very interesting to see what happens when and if we ever get back to normal. And with this government, I don't think we'll get back to normal.
I really hope it's the case of when rather than if. I'm really hoping.
A pub for a cup of tea.
Imagine, and then pubs that don't do drinks anymore. That'll be a change.
Pubs to buy some bread.
What do you think of the current political landscape? Because I know you're quite outspoken about politics.
Well, I'm anti-Brexit. I was always anti-Brexit. I was anti-Brexit in '68 when Enoch Powell came out with Brexit. I'm anti-Brexit now, even though it's happened, and I will be anti-Brexit even if in a few years it is a success, because it will never be a success. It will never be a success. It's an absolute,
True.
it's an indignity to the people that have voted these idiots in and allowed them to take them, allow themselves to be taken by false premises. We are fucked. In the last 2 days, they've been Elton John and Radiohead talking about the negotiations need to be redone. I think they should have been a lot more severe about it before it was done, because they were in a more of a position than most to actually say what shit was ahead of us. In a way, Britain deserves that shit. It needs to eat that shit. It's the mindset of what the British have allowed themselves to be. I found it very sad that some Asians voted Brexit. I think that's pitifully sad. That hurts. But so is that's how the decades have been. People forget where Asians in particular have come from. Yeah,
That's the main thing.
They forget too readily what parents and other people have had to endure, and for them to vote Brexit, I think is a tragedy. And that's before you fetch COVID into it. And COVID is handled so badly, it's unbelievable. The death rate is astronomical, given that it's a small island. It's not looking good for that buying the bread in a pub, quite frankly. But other than that, fucking great. No, I think Labour are shite. They're really doing bad. Corbyn was terrible. So there's not that much to look forward to. I mean, I'm more of a Green Party person nowadays, and unfortunately, without proportional representation, they don't stand a chance either. But at least there's bloody hope. Labour seem to be waiting for a bit like Bhangra. They're waiting for the scene to change for them and to benefit. With a bit of, without the hard work that needs to go into it. So I'm very disappointed with Labour. I was a dyed-in-the-wool Labour supporter. Oh my God.
Yeah. So was my family. Like, we still are, but I just feel like Labour is not as strongly represented anymore. I feel like the people that represent Labour now, or the people that are part of the Labour Party, they don't really try to get the point across as strongly as the years before, as the years gone by, which is really bad to see. It's not nice. It definitely makes my parents very upset, I can tell you that.
I think, again, proportional representation, if Labour were really into the idea of winning, or indeed winning people over and changing the country, they would be into proportional representation. But they're not. They're quite happy with this two-party system where they play table tennis with the Tories every few years. And it's just not good enough for the country, unfortunately, because shit like Brexit can get through. And it's like COVID can get through.
It kind of like blurs the line between like what you're voting Labour and Conservative for. It just feels like, just two parties in the same pod, isn't it, really? Do you know what I mean? Like, you can't... Labour hasn't really distinguished themselves as far from the Tory ideal, can they?
No,
that's
trying to keep their powder dry, and that doesn't work.
They're trying to keep their hands clean.
Yeah.
We have to make them dirty first. You know what I mean? They won't do that. So
no, there are some good people in Labour. There's some great orators, but none that one would be swept by anymore. unfortunately.
I just wanted to quickly ask, what do you want to see in today's like South Asian music from the UK?
That's not probably a question for me, because I've never wanted to see anything. I'm always surprised if I see something different. If you say you want to see something, then really you're moulding something, again, a bit like Bhangra, into something that you want to see, which isn't like labour, hard work. You've got to put the hard work in, and surprise is what I want to see then, maybe. Surprise. I want to see something that makes me think a bit. But like with the two-party system, the idea of music also seems to be, well, put your lot in with whatever the common denominator is and try not to do anything different or out of the ordinary, I think. I mean, I'm not particularly into a lot of African, Caribbean, American hip-hop sort of stuff, but I do think that they're trying to do something different in the way that some of the songs... I hate Kanye West as a person, but in terms of the music that he's pushing, I think it's really pushing on a lot of levels, not just the lyrics, but the production and the way that he's put songs together. It's pretty strong. I mean, I don't know. Also, I'm old. My kids are in a position. My eldest is older than I was when I started the band, and so really, I look to them to sort of do things and see what they want to come up with. But
Are your like family members, are your siblings into music like yourself, or do they have like other career plans in mind?
My oldest he's doing a degree in music, so he likes music, but it's more technology based music, which doesn't really do it for me.
See, I struggled to say that. Trying to put it in the nicest way possible. It just doesn't do it for me.
I wish it did, but it doesn't.
You prefer analog over digital?
No, it's not even that. I've learned to embrace digital as digital became better as a technology. When digital first started, it was quite coarse. If anything was distorted, it would just tweak. It would make piercing sounds, and it had no headroom. Nowadays, digital has the headroom of analog, and therefore it's so much easier to be working with digital and going back to mixes after a few months or years. So the benefits of digital, I think, are immense. The quality of analog, I think, is partly to do with the brain and how one perceives. Because with analog, there was a lot of noise, studio noise. Different units had their own noise, and that added to a certain sort of texture. So, yeah, I think in the 90s there was definitely a lot of people hurt by Which Way to Go. I was very lucky to come across, when I was in France, to come across someone who worked with MP3s and developed MP3s. He did a seminar on the difference between vinyl and MP3s, and part of the vinyl is that you also have your clicks and your needle hitting certain areas, and so you learn to live with those clicks and you learn to deal with the anticipation of the record coming in. So it's the brain that's at work. And then when vinyl got transferred to digital, it was a lot cleaner. All those noises had gone. They'd try to push the power up, but they'd wreck the mix. So people were in a kerfuffle, and nowadays they can sort that kerfuffle out because the technology is a lot better. Yeah, that's the analog and digital thing sorted.
Okay, on that note, it has been amazing to have you on our podcast, Tjinder. I definitely can tell you from my experience, I have learned a lot speaking to you, because there was a lot of things that I didn't know about, especially, you know, coming from someone who has been making music for such a long time. So it's definitely been a learning journey for me. So I appreciate you coming on our podcast and talking to us about your journey and answering our questions. And I hope the best for you and your band
Thank you
for the future.
Thank you.
And Arminderum. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you for coming on as well. It's been quite crazy, because I remember watching the video for Brimful Asher like about 15 years ago when I was a kid. And now I'm interviewing you as well after all these years. So that's kind of crazy. So
Lovely.
for me, that's kind of cool. But thank you for jumping on the podcast this episode. Thank you.
Thank you
Take
once
care.
again.
Cheers.
Thank you. Okay. Bye. Bye.